Welcome to the Podkey summary of Build Intelligent Siri Experiences with App Schemas from WWDC 2026. Today's story is really about one idea. If an app describes its content clearly, Siri gets a whole lot more useful. That means better search, better voice commands, and even smoother handoffs between apps, without developers building some giant custom language system from scratch. The interesting part is how all these pieces fit together, from structured entities and semantic indexing to on-screen awareness, cross-app transfer, and testing that catches problems early. The foundation here is something called an app entity, and in plain English, it's a structured way for an app to tell the system, here's a thing I already have, here's its identifier, and here are the important properties that describe it. That matters, because Siri doesn't need a brand new data model invented just for voice. It can reason about the app's real content directly. So if your app has messages, contacts, documents, or whatever else, an app entity is the bridge that turns those into something the system can understand, instead of just opaque app data. Once an entity conforms to an app schema, Siri gets a predefined understanding of what kind of thing it is. If it's using a messages schema or a contact schema, the system already knows the shape of that domain and how people tend to talk about it. That's how you get natural requests, like, show my last message from Flare, without developers handwriting a giant pile of language rules. These schemas live inside broader domains, like mail, messages, or photos, and they act like contracts. They tell Siri which actions exist and how the parameters map to everyday language. There's a nice practical payoff here too. If an app adopts a domain's full set of schemas, like both send message and draft message in the messages domain, it can support a fuller conversational flow right away. A big step up comes from indexed entity. When developers implement that protocol searchable fields from an entity, say a message body, get indexed into Spotlight's semantic index. Semantic is the key word there. Siri can look for meaning, not just an exact text match. So if someone says, show the messages with flair about movies, Siri can find messages that mention movie titles or movie-related content, even if the word movies never appears exactly that way. That cuts down on the awkward back and forth where the assistant hears you fine, but still somehow acts like you asked in ancient riddles. Of course, not every app can or should index everything. Maybe the dataset is huge, maybe it lives mostly on a server, maybe it changes constantly, or maybe privacy rules make local indexing a bad fit. In those cases, developers can fall back to entity string query. That means Siri hands over the raw user string, and the app does its own matching logic. It doesn't have the same semantic understanding, so it's less magical, but it gives developers full control, especially for real-time or privacy-sensitive data. Another really useful piece is on-screen awareness. Developers can annotate UI elements with the corresponding app entity, either through user activity for a single focus screen or view annotations for lists. That lets Siri resolve references like this message or this photo based on what the person is currently looking at. So instead of forcing someone to restate the name of the item, the visual context and the voice command connect cleanly. That's what makes commands like edit this message feel direct instead of weirdly formal. Then there's transferable, which is where things start getting especially useful across apps. If an entity conforms to the transferable protocol and provides an intent value representation, the app can export that content in a system-wide format. Another app understands. A contact, for example, might be represented as something like an intent person. So a request like, text my wife this conversation, can work because the original app hands off the relevant contact or message in a shared format while still keeping control over how its own data is stored internally. That shared format is what enables multi-app workflows. Siri can first resolve something on screen, then pass it to a second app that does the next action. A good example is, email my wife this reply from Bubbles. The source app has to expose the content in a transferable way. and the destination app has to know how to match or import what it receives. So this isn't just one clever feature. It's a chain of compatible pieces working together. There's also a nice bit of developer guardrail built into Xcode. If an app adopts part of a schema domain but leaves out a required related piece, the build can fail at compile time. So if someone implements send message but forgets draft message, Xcode can flag it and even offer a fix-it that generates stub code. That early feedback matters because it catches holes before runtime, before Siri hits a dead end in the middle of what should have been a smooth conversation. Testing follows the same practical philosophy. With app intents testing, developers can unit test intents in isolation, pass in parameters, and assert results without invoking Siri at all. That makes it much faster to verify the business logic first. Then they can layer on manual testing in shortcuts, Spotlight, and finally Siri itself. It's a sensible progression. Validate the core behavior early, then make sure the full user experience holds together end to end. Put it all together, and the best practice path is pretty clear. Model the app's content as entities. Adopt the right app schema domains. Use indexed entity wherever semantic search makes sense. Add transferable for cross-app scenarios and run it all through a testing pipeline. The result isn't just voice access for the sake of voice access. It also improves discoverability in Spotlight and shortcuts, and generally makes the app feel more connected to the rest of the system. When this is done well, the user gets faster, more accessible interactions, and the app gets to feel smarter without pretending it invented intelligence all by itself. So that's the bigger picture here. Teach the system what your app's content actually is, and a lot of useful behavior starts to fall out naturally. Better search, better context, better handoff, fewer moments where Siri needs a second cup of coffee. That's a pretty good trade. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.